If you ever wondered what it's like to be torn apart by space zombies, well, you're about to find out. Put a smile on that face and prepare to die again with our review of the Callisto Protocol. Now, without further ado, here he is, the man of the hour, X-Boro.
What is up, guys? X-Boro here, and today we're going to be reviewing the Callisto Protocol. This is the first outing for Striking Distance Studios. It's a pretty good game. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's pretty scary. So without further ado, let's actually take a look at some of that gameplay and delve right into the review. Gameplay-wise, this game really shines, and I cannot stress that enough. It's very heavily melee focused. I mean, you get the one, maybe two melee weapons early game that you can upgrade throughout the game at these little stations, kind of like in Deadspace. Each weapon has its own upgrade tree, which is really nice, a nice addition. As you can see here, there's some stealth gameplay involved. These enemies are obviously blind. The stealth gameplay will allow you to one-shot enemies, but I wouldn't expect to get the drop on some of the earlier enemies, as they can hear and see your actions very well. What I really like that they did here is they created this sense of suspense to every single encounter, because all it takes is one enemy in this game to really give you a lot of trouble. They do hit very hard. It gives you more of an atmosphere of trying to actually survive. Some of the gameplay really shines though when it comes to the dodging mechanic. You hold back on the left stick, it allows you to block. Left allows you to dodge left, right allows you to dodge right. The only thing I didn't like is that sometimes when you dodge left or right, you'll still get hit with an attack. As you can see here, there's also this thing called a GRP, which is a gauntlet that gives you kind of a telekinesis ability, where you can throw enemies into environmental hazards, each other. I really enjoyed this part because it made ad control so easy in some of the encounters that have a ton of enemies. Like I said, you really want to manage the enemies in this game. One big complaint that I do have is that the camera doesn't really lean into combating multiple enemies at once, mainly because it's way too close. Some of the corridors are very dark, and it just allows enemies to get the drop on you very easily. I understand they did this to create more of a sense of suspense and more of a sense of surviving, but at the same time it did get a little annoying dying some deaths to that. As you can see some of the gunplay here, the gunplay actually feels very nice in this game. A lot of the guns have a secondary fire mode, and that's pretty awesome, especially some of the earlier ones. They eat up a little more ammo in the skill tree when you get them, but they're definitely worth it. There's a lot of weapon variety when it comes to the guns. I mean, you have handguns, you have shotguns, you have assault rifles. You have something called a skunk gun, which is kind of like a shotgun, but you trade up for later in the game for the riot gun. I really liked the combat in this game. I really liked the gameplay. There's a lot of things going on in most encounters. The enemy variety really leans into this. You got exploding enemies, you got blind enemies, you have regular zombies, spitter zombies. One big complaint I did have is that there's only a couple boss fights in the game, but both boss fights are incredibly difficult. I feel like the first boss fight is actually more difficult than the final boss fight. You're also going to find that this game, much like Deadspace, leans very heavily into the dismemberment mechanic. If you really want to get strategic with your gameplay, you can knock an enemy's arm off and you can always dodge to that side and won't have to worry about them hitting you on that side anymore. You can also knock their legs off to make them crawl along the ground, which sets them up for a pretty easy one-shot. Another thing I like that they did is they tied the melee and the gunplay together with kind of a quick scope mechanic. I thought was a really nice touch. The difficulty of each encounter actually grows as the game goes on, and I really like that because it really helped create that atmosphere that you're actually trying to survive. I did not like, though, that they had so minimal boss fights. Now, graphics-wise, I cannot stress enough how beautiful this game actually is. You can see it right here. I mean, you can see the sweat on the characters. You can see the snow on the environments. Even the enemies, you can almost see the squish of the blood and the skin on them. I really, really like the graphics. I just wish that in some spots they had made the lighting just a little bit better, because some spots get a little dark. It allows enemies to sneak up on you a little more. It does get a little frustrating. I also really don't like how close they put the camera to the protagonist. As I said before in the gameplay, it really makes it hard in those encounters where you have a ton of enemies. But as you can see, even the transformation sequences in this game, they're great. I mean, the level of gore, the level of blood, how they did detail to the skin and the enemies. I loved every second of the graphics of this game. I don't have a single complaint about it, except for some of the environments look a little bland and a little bit repetitive. But other than that, top tier with this game on the graphics. As you can see in a later clip here with one of the bosses, the way that they did it and how they made this boss look, I just loved it. You know, I can't actually stress enough how much the graphics on this game really pushed the PS5 to its limit. And I really, really, really think that if you like graphically inclined survival horror games, this is the game for you, given that the gameplay is great as well. I'll cover later in the video some of the replay value, which kind of affected my choices on it, but if you're a horror fanatic, graphics-wise, this title is definitely for you. Now, as far as story goes in this game, it's your typical survival horror. You got your zombies, you got your evil corporations trying to make zombies, you got zombie viruses, space zombie viruses, and you've even got your evil tablets trying to turn people into space zombies. The story here is, I mean, it's there, but it's not the best. It doesn't really go into a lot of the backstory, and I felt like it kind of left a lot of plot holes here. It never really tells you much about the shadow organization that's working behind the scenes, or even a whole lot about why the virus turns these zombies into kind of like a spore kind of fungus deal. It's just, the story's really not a shining point for this game. It didn't do anything for me story-wise. Just too much left unsaid. Replay value-wise, Callisto Protocol really does not give you a lot of incentive to replay the game unless you're trying to get a platinum trophy. I mean, it's a good game. It's good for a playthrough. If you want to find all the secrets, that would give you a little bit of incentive to keep playing through it. There's supposed to be some DLC coming out for it. It's mainly story DLC. Otherwise, though, I don't really see myself coming back to Callisto Protocol anytime soon, unless I try to beat it on maximum security difficulty. But other than that, really, it's good for a playthrough. I mean, for me, that's a big selling point for games on whether I'm going to spend 60 to 70 bucks on them, is if they have a lot of replay value. No secret weapons, no new game plus, pretty much one playthrough. What you see is kind of what you get with this game. Honestly, I was a little disappointed because of the price tag to see that it wasn't offering a lot more in the way of replay value. So if you're looking for a game that's kind of like Resident Evil that has a ton of replay value, honestly, I would just look elsewhere. This probably will not be the one for you. Final verdict on this game. If you're a fan of survival horrors, it's worth picking up, although honestly for me, I can't warrant the $70 price tag it's at right now. I'm going to give the gameplay an 8.0. Gameplay is very solid, very good. Love the gameplay, very innovative. Can't stress enough how great it is. Graphics, 9.0. This game is absolutely beautiful. They did a lot of attention to detail. Loved every second of the graphics. Story, I'm going to give a 6.5. it just really wasn't hitting the right notes for me on the story. That's really all that needs to be said there. Replay value, 5.0. Not got a lot of replay value unless you're trying to platinum the game, and even then, the trophies, 85% of them you get just playing the game. Final score, gonna give the Callisto Protocol a 7.0. It's worth picking up and adding to your collection, but honestly, right now, the $70 price tag, I would wait for the price to drop on it. That's all there is, guys. Thanks for joining us today. Give me a like and subscribe if you found this video helpful in your purchasing decisions or anything like that. As always, I am Xboro, and I am signing off.